All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started here this evening. Please let me know if you're having any trouble hearing me or having any technical issues, but hopefully everyone is able to hear me. Again, I want to reintroduce myself for those of you who are now joining us. My name is Danielle Agreement. I am the Director of Strategy, Partnerships, and Initiatives for the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts, and I have the privilege of working with this incredible team. I just want to quickly go over what we'll be kind of getting into this evening, and then I will turn over the mic shortly. So to get us started here this evening, our CEO, Rachel Graham, will be providing opening remarks and introducing a shared vision forward for BOPA that her and the interim board have been collaborating on since the spring. Next, the interim executive committee of our board will then be answering some previously submitted questions. Once they've gone through those questions, we will take a few questions live using the Q&A function. For those of you looking at your screens right now, to use Q&A, please use the Q&A button at the top of your Teams window next to this chat function, and we'll be able to see your questions that way. If you'll have any further questions about how to use the Q&A function or closed captioning, or experience any connectivity issues throughout this hour, please feel free to let us know in the chat. Lastly, I just want to make mention that we would appreciate that comments in the chat were respectful of your peers who are all here to listen in and learn today as well. We want to maintain a space of understanding and appreciation of and for one another throughout this hour. And with that, I'm going to turn over the virtual mic to our Chief Executive Officer of the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts, Ms. Rachel Graham.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. I first want to acknowledge our board and staff, not just for their time here this evening, but the time that they have committed to this work and this organization over the past 8 months. Now, we recognize collectively that there is a level of uncertainty as a result of recent events, and we want to let you know that we have worked diligently to ensure that this would not be the case and will be committed to answering as many questions as we possibly can in the future. So there were a few things that I committed to when I accepted responsibility for leading this organization 8 months ago. I committed to recognize that because of a fraught history, this organization will remain under incredible scrutiny, and we would have to work overtime to regain the trust of the community we serve. I was committed to bringing clarity to the fact that the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts serves as the Arts Council for the city of Baltimore, while working to develop a refined mission and set of strategic imperatives for our work to support arts in our city. I was committed to cast the vision of a community-centric organization that seeks and respects the input of artists and residents alike, and to support our talented staff in living that vision every day. I was committed to remember that while we are quasi, we are still governmental and should function as such, keeping in mind our accountability to Baltimore City residents, our commitment to work with city leadership to identify opportunities for synergy, and our ability to leverage public investment to grow support of the arts through corporate foundation and other philanthropic dollars. I was committed to take an economic development approach to arts and cultural promotions, support, and growth. And I was committed to be courageous enough to lean into the discomfort of practicing truly equitable approaches to fund disbursement, program creation, and advocacy for the Baltimore City arts community. These commitments continue to hold true and serve as the foundation of a body of work the staff and its board has been moving forward for just under a year. James Baldwin once said, "You cannot fix what you will not face." And this has been the spirit with which this group has worked to make sure that we plot a course forward for this organization that is right-sized and makes sense. I and the new board were tasked by the administration and city council with taking a deep and some cases difficult look at the governance, finances, and mission of this organization, and to reimagine this work that we do in light of what we learned. Now, more will be said about our finances later in this conversation, But to be clear, what BOPA currently faces is not the result of irresponsibility or mismanagement. It is the result of a cataclysmic mixture of the COVID cliff, years of perceived instability which have cooled interest from funders, and quite honestly, an unsustainable business model that has been documented as placing pressures on this organization for years. Now, over the past several months, under the leadership of our Mission and Community Partnerships Committee, we've taken a quick scan of the partnership landscape, identified the overlaps, gaps, and synergies that exist in supporting the arts community, and developed a set of strategic pillars that would frame the future of our work. These include supporting the arts community through advocacy and grant making by serving as a local partner to regional, state, and national coalitions advocating for funding and policies that codify change and respond to the needs of artists, arts organizations, and communities seeking to expand arts access. This includes supporting the work of partners such as the Greater Baltimore Cultural Alliance and Maryland Citizens for the Arts to deploy activations such as Baltimore Arts Day, in addition to the programs and prizes that we currently implement. We will work across all stakeholder groups to develop a citywide agenda to grow the cultural economy. We honor and support the work of Baltimore Together and the Greater Baltimore Committee, who have worked to identify creative industry sectors. We propose serving as a convener and implementation partner for the work to identify how best to support the cultural economy and formulate a cohesive and strategic approach to cultivating creative industries. We will develop industry pipelines that suss out which sectors are most likely to support economic growth for the city and the region. We have already started this work through the launch of Project Artscape and involvement with the Mid-Atlantic Fashion Council. Finally, we will shift the way in which we approach promotion of Baltimore as an arts hub and a cultural mecca to residents and visitors alike by leveraging content creation and campaigns, combined with support for and execution of a localized, targeted calendar of small-scale events. So how do we get there, and what is it that we need? Over the next several weeks, we will launch a set of small group meetings focused on each of the strategic pillars to refine the specifics of what this organization looks like outside of its current relationship with the city, developing a new strategic plan, timeline, key performance indicators, and the first-year plan of work. We will share this refined vision and structure with potential supporters and start the arduous work to garner support. Now, I know this is no small task, and I sound like a wide-eyed optimist who even suggests that this is something that can be done considering recent challenges. And the reality is that this is not something that is unusual for the sector or even for nonprofits. But what I'll tell you is something that I shared when I first was being considered for this role. I am stubborn to a fault, especially when there are things that I believe in and I feel passionately about. And the Baltimore Office of Promotion in the Arts is one of those things. I believe in BOPA. Now, why do I so stubbornly believe in this organization and this approach? Because at this count, 121 of you showed up on a Tuesday night when there is a rally that's about to kick off related to the presidential election because you want to hear what we have to say. Because I've listened to partners and artists and supporters who have told this is what the city needs. Because I truly believe if someone else or somewhere else was equipped or resourced to do this, they would have done it already. And because the level of support for the good, important work that BOPA has done for 42 years, and I believe in the need for us in this city, that support has been overwhelming. So for example, of 43 quasi and city agencies in this city, T. Rowe Price supports 29 of them, and they have supported BOPA the longest. Last weekend, the T. Rowe Price Foundation committed a 3-year, $90,000 investment because they believe in our renewed vision and will be working with us to chart the path forward. We are currently in talks to work with a respected authority in Arts Council Development and Sustainability to help us further refine the vision for this organization. And the Curry School of Business of Johns Hopkins University reached out to us to offer their support as we craft a solid business plan for the organization as we move forward. This is just a little bit of the support that we've heard over the last month and a half. One of the things that I said in my first conversation with city council as I came into this role and we were giving testimony as to what is important about the work that we do is that this is a life or death matter. While we're having these conversations, artists across this city are suffering. They're suffering from homelessness. They are suffering from inadequate health care. They're some of the prime sufferers in the opioid addiction crisis. I believe that BOPA has a role that it can play. No matter what life looks like after we deal with the contract with the city of Baltimore, we are an arts council, we are an arts advocacy organization, and while we look forward to the opportunity to potentially look at a new way to work with the city, whatever happens with the contract, that responsibility still remains. And with that, I will turn it over to conversation with our executive committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I want to introduce now our interim executive board of the interim executive committee of our board, starting with Andrew Chavis, our interim board chair, who's also the senior project manager at Brailsford and Dunleavy. Lady Breon, our interim vice chair, who's also the executive director of the Black Arts District. Angela Wells Sims, our interim treasurer and principal at the Durant Bailey Group. And April Lewis, interim secretary and director of community and culture at Open Works. Our executive committee will be answering a few of the questions that have been submitted in advance, and we'll begin with what does contract termination with the city mean for BOPA and all that BOPA has managed and produced with this change, including facilities, events, programs, grants, Arts Council designation, and et cetera. And I'm going to turn to our board chair, Andrew, to address this question first.
Great, thank you, Daniela, and appreciate everyone being here for what is a pivotal moment for the organization. In terms of the contract termination, I think I just want to bring up the legacy portion that Rachel mentioned. So BOPA's contract with the city kind of stems from its decades-long relationship with the city of Baltimore. So it's aggregated a lot of responsibility over those decades that now essentially just needs to find new homes and needs to have new conversations. So practically, it would mean that the facilities that we currently manage on behalf of the city of Baltimore would need to find a new manager, either within the city or with a different organization. It means the events that BOPA has helped to produce will now need to find a new producer. In any of the grants that were bestowed to artists on behalf of the city of Baltimore through various funding opportunities, we'll also need to find a new partner to distribute those. The farmers market is also one I know there's been conversations and questions about. And again, it just would need to find a new operator because BOPA would no longer be contracted to perform that on behalf of the city. However, at this time, we just can't say what that actually means or what that looks like. Again, it's a little early on in the process in terms of our conversations with the city. The last one, and I think the most important one for some of the information that Rachel was sharing is just the understanding of the State Arts Council designation and also the PAC, the Public Arts Committee. So those are two kind of intertwined pieces of legislation that are state related, government related, and again, who is responsible for executing the tasks that are associated with that. We'll just need to find a new process and a new definition, because once the contract is terminated, that definition either won't rest with BOPA or it might rest in a place of limbo, frankly, in terms of the State Arts Council designation, of which BOPA is currently the designee. And again, we're working to have conversations with the city and the state to make sure we can understand what that transition looks like. That's a high-level summary, Danielle, of the complexity,
Perfect.
again, that's been gathered over decades.
Yes, no, understood. And thank you, Andrew. I appreciate that breakdown. That actually leads to our next question here. Is there anything that can be done to avoid contract termination at this point? And
At
Andrew,
this
sorry, that
point,
question is also directed to you.
yeah, no worries. That's a very interesting way to phrase it. At this point, I'm not sure. I'll disclaim it that, I'm not an attorney, and we got a letter that was in relation to our contract. So I think what we can help explain is just that currently the Board of Estimates is scheduled to meet on November 6th. They are the ones who will kind of take up this recommendation that was listed out in the letter to cancel the contract with BOPA. That's something that it's a public body that's made up, the mayor, the comptroller, the city solicitor, I believe the director of public works, and also the city council president. So those individuals essentially are getting a recommendation to cancel the contract, and they need to vote on that. At this point in time, we're just waiting on the outcome of that, and we're just going to proceed accordingly. Having heard the mayor's comments and trying to understand and appreciate them, we're going to move forward in the best way that we can until we get the outcome of that vote.
Thank you, Andrew. I want to move on to a few questions that we got, obviously pertaining to our financial standing. What confidence can the public hold in BOPA? The issues have been ongoing for 5 years. Where is your sustainability strategy? How can you do the work and balance your budget? And can BOPA attract significant sponsors beyond city government to fill that gap? I'd like to turn these questions over to Ms. Angela Wells-Sims.
Thank you. I want to start by providing a little context that may help understand the process that we engaged in for developing a sustainability strategy. When I think about sustainability, it generally focuses on long-term health and viability, and a short-term plan addresses more of immediate challenges. And those combined is what I'll call a stabilization plan. So at the start of Rachel's tenure, she actually acknowledged that a sustainability plan was necessary, which I think she addressed in her opening comments. For the last 8 months, several committees have been working together collectively on strategies around funding, community engagement, transparency, governance, operational efficiencies that will all eventually roll up into a comprehensive strategy. With the announcement of the city's cancellation of the contract, we had to shift more of our focus more to what we would call that short-term strategy planning, which means that we need to make sure that our budget and priorities align with the stabilization of the organization. Also, at the time of the city's announcement, BOPA was faced because one of the questions was specifically about budgeting and cash flow, or more budgeting question. When the city announced the termination of the contract, BOPA did face what I'll consider a short-term cash flow issue and not a budgeting issue. What was driving that cash flow issue was contractual delivery, the misalignment of the actual expenses or the services being delivered with the payments. And because most of this audience is arts community, I'll use an art analogy. I like analogies that bring connection. If someone was commissioned to do a piece of art and they finished that artwork, however, the person that they were providing this to says, I'm going to spread this out and give you these payments over time. Oftentimes, when you're commissioned to do this, there's not a lot of profitability built into this. So if you're doing this work and the expenses come up front, however, you have that payment that's lagged, there becomes this cash crunch. And the interim board identified that pretty early as we got into the contract year. And one of the priorities and discussions that we had is, as the next round of contractual negotiations come up, that be a priority. As far as rebalancing things, I think that we'll have to definitely continue on the path of how do we maintain stabilization As Andrew just mentioned, we're still waiting for official announcement or, Board of Estimates to move forward with this. There's also transition that's required in the shifting of the staff. So as we get clearer, our assumptions, our budgeting and forecast will be modified as well. It looks like another part of that, the questions that you asked, Daniela, was whether or not BOPA would attract significant sponsorship. As Rachel was mentioning, prior to COVID, there was a different level of raise. BOPA was able to raise significant funds. If you followed BOPA for years, they were able to raise significant funds from private sponsors and donors. And then even during the first year of the pandemic, you saw corporations, providing lots of contributions to not just, BOPA, but nonprofit organizations in general. However, a year in, you saw a national decline in those donations just because of economic pressures from these corporations and their uncertainty as well. I'll say, we have confidence that BOPA has a lot to offer. What the city of Baltimore has to offer, the artists that we're continuing to be proud and supporting, I think that we will attract sponsorship that can be on par or even exceeding the levels that we've attracted with the city contract. I think also, with the interims board recommendations, fully executing those recommendations and attracting a balanced mix of corporate and art community stakeholders who share an aligned vision to fully realize the arts and promotions not only will attract sponsors, it'll also, I think, make BOPA a model of how do we change, post-COVID, how do we realign and swivel to be known as a thriving arts community and supporting a robust city landscape. I think one part to add to that, I think one of the biggest things that Andrew just mentioned about some of the contractual things with the city, I think one of our biggest focuses and our, maintaining that Arts Council designation is a big component to keeping things moving forward.
Thank you, Angela. It's very helpful. Actually, as a follow-up to that, our next question asks, what are the steps you're taking to address the issues that led to BOPA losing its contract with the city? What will you be able to do to really support artists when you are still needing to stabilize yourself? Which I think partially you answered a little bit there, but I know you might have a few more thoughts on that.
Sure. Like you said, as highlighted before in the last set of questions, BOPA's leadership and interim board has been making progress for the last 8 months to address some of these longstanding systemic issues and improve transparency, improve the funding structure, and improve the governance. I think that, continuing in that direction will address these gaps and challenges ahead. To your second point about, the question regarding the mission, I would say BOPA's mission has always been to serve the Baltimore's arts as the Baltimore's Arts Council and also support the arts community by organizing cultural events, advocating for the arts, and promoting Baltimore's cultural assets overall. As I mentioned earlier, it's vital for us to maintain that Arts Council designation. And although the city is looking to bring, some of those events and property management in-house, this now actually allows the opportunity and capacity for BOPA to support more curation of the artists themselves to support these larger scale events like Artscape. It also creates capacity to manage smaller scale events and, cultural engagement within the community, not just for these large events. And also, the capacity to convene stakeholders who support art advocacy.
Absolutely. Thank you. I want to move on to our next question. Outside of events like Artscape, what does this change mean for the individual artist community? What are the biggest changes we will see and or feel, especially when it comes to funding? I want to lobby this question to Lady Breon.
Thank you. So I think we've kind of talked about this a little bit in Angela's remarks that she just gave, and also in Rachel's opening. But first and foremost, BOPA and its work as the Arts Council right now isn't changing, right? And that's specifically the work that's most impacting the individual artist community here in Baltimore City. And so, as Rachel mentioned, there's a lot of diligent and consistent work in thinking through a plan that will lead to the least amount of interruption and negative impact on the individual arts community, right, in Baltimore City. We want to see a smooth transition from this contract with the city. And so by and large, what we'll see is there will be a change in BOPA no longer curating some of the events that, you know, we're used to seeing from BOPA. So again, like Artscape, like the book fair, right, the MLK parade, the farmers market, fireworks, etc., as well as the facilities that BOPA is currently running on behalf or curating things in relation to on behalf of the city. But it does, as Rachel mentioned, presents an opportunity for BOPA to think about new events, whether small or large scale, that they would be able to do that are absolutely curated by BOPA in this new and reimagined way that will move forward. And so there's a lot of opportunity. And we also know that funding provided by BOPA is integral to many of the artists and small arts organizations in Baltimore City. It's BOPA's mission to support creatives at all stages and arts organizations of all sizes. And BOPA wants to continue that work, right? So there is a concern that without a cohesive plan, that there could be interruption with individual artists in the way that they are impacted. And so we are really hopeful and pushing for a cohesive plan and strategy that will not negatively impact our creative community here, given the changes with the contract with the city.
Thank you, Lady Brianna. I also want to address this next question with you as well. What programs will we continue to steward?
Absolutely. So again, we've said this before, want to reiterate that BOPA is not just the organization that provides services in relation to its contract with the city. It does serve as the Arts Council for Baltimore City, and a lot of that is revolving around grant giving, right, in Baltimore. And so for those of you who don't know, that still would include the Janet and Walter Sinam Art Prize, right? And this is an endowment to the organization, so it's not impacted by the change in the contract. And fun fact, shameless plug, applications are open right now. So for the artists on the call, y'all should check it out because the time is now. Also, the Municipal Art Society of Baltimore Travel Prize, Business of Art Workshops, Maryland Regional Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. Shout out to all the writers that are here. Open Studio Tours, Art at Work, as well as other mural projects. Free Fall Baltimore, which we all love, is still going to be happening. Programming around fashion in general, as well as sustainable fashion, will also continue. But BOPA may no longer run the Creative Baltimore Fund because that is an annual allocation that comes as a part of the city contract, which BOPA just manages, right? However, it is currently open right now. So also for all the artists, this is something that you can apply to right now while it is still active. So I want to encourage you to do that. But that is something that may change in the future. And then it is also possible that exhibitions such as Emerge, Peak Artist, and B24, etc., may have to find new homes. But there's a ton of things that BOPA will continue to do as the Art Council for Baltimore City.
Thank you, Lady Brianna, especially for saying that. We will definitely get into some opportunities before we end this call that are available for folks now. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I want to move on to our next question, which is what is the specific plan for the Bromo Seltzer Arts Tower and Studio 33 Art Center, or School 33 Art Center, their resident artists and farmers market vendors? I want to ask Andrew if he is able to address this question. And Rachel, of course, if you have anything specific to add to this as well.
Yeah, thanks, Daniela. So the specific plan for these individual items is unfortunately right now it's a little bit unknown. So again, we received the termination letter. We heard from the city yesterday just to initiate a time to meet, which was kind of outlined in the termination letter. So we're organizing get the right time in place to make that happen as soon as possible to understand what is the specific plan for all these items. I will say that some of these responsibilities were items that the interim board was considering as something to be transitioned. And so I don't think there's any necessarily resistance, but it's our desire that it's done responsibly and that we have enough time to actually unravel the complexity again of these facilities that have been in BOPA's portfolio for decades and have many tenant requirements and relationships that need to be understood. So, we hope that can be carried out in a 90-day period. It's unfortunate we don't have an idea on a specific plan right now, but again, we'll work with the city and meet with them shortly to understand what the plan is.
Can I jump in and say that based upon the time frame that was listed in the letter, we will continue to operate the farmers market through the end of the season. So the same folks that you're used to seeing will be operating the farmers market. And if I'm not mistaken, that's like right before Christmas. That it'll be
Until
running.
December 22nd.
Yes, so please plan to go get your holiday turkeys and everything else. The farmers market is there.
Thank you both. We are almost at the end of our at least pre-submitted questions here. So our next one is, has there been any immediate planning for the first few months after the January 20th cutoff for BOPA events? And I think we were just speaking to a little bit of this. What are you doing to work with the city over the next 90 days? Can you provide an update on the transition so far? If there's a roadmap for the transition between BOPA and the mayor's office, can you update us on that? And Andrew and Rachel, I'll turn to you two again to address this one.
Yeah, I think I'll start with the second one first and just kind of refer to the last question, just in that, beyond, again, a document that was leaked over a year ago or indicating intentions over a year ago, that, had some ideas in it, but again, it's our understanding that that's old information. And so we're moving forward with kind of just what is the plan, meet with the city to understand how to do this responsibly. And again, I think we've expressed our concern with that, but we are making steps to move forward as quickly as possible to start the conversations on the roadmap, to do it in a way that works in the best interest of everyone and can be the least disruption to both sides of the table in terms of our BOPA as its own independent organization and the city as an office that's also, trying to do good things and has ambitions for the arts community. So that's the second one. I think immediate planning is a good question. I think there's a lot we got to figure out. What does this mean with the contract ending and what does it mean fiscally? And there's a lot of big questions about how this plays off after that January 20th date.
Can I also weigh in, and we shared this in my opening remarks, that it has been at least my position that we move forward with the planning that we're starting to talk about before the termination letter came out. We haven't, the funding of it changes. The relationships are a bit different in that, we won't be a quasi-city agency, but that doesn't prohibit us from still working with city organizations, with regional, state, and national organizations, more closely with the arts community. And so part of that planning, and I know we'll talk about, ways to engage moving down the line is, growing our community advisory board, looking at potential support. In March, that is when the interim board is going to roll off. And so what does that look like so far as additional board support? It's really continuing the work to do these small group conversations to help plot the course for what the organization as an arts council, with or without a designation, because there is still work that can be done. And so again, the plan is not formed, but we will move forward with forming the plan, as had always been the case. It's just there's a reality or a dual track of identifying funding. And I think when we come to the table with a plan and a cohesive vision, that makes it a little bit more palatable to get support for that.
Thank you both. Our final question that's been submitted in advance, and then as I mentioned, folks, we will then turn to the questions that have been placed in the Q&A window for those that joined us a little bit later. If you do have any questions that have not been addressed as yet, please feel free to use the Q&A function at the top of the screen. Just a note that just in interest of time for the questions that we are unable to answer here this evening, we will be memorializing them in an FAQ document that will live on our website and be posted by the end of this week. So please know that your questions are valid and will be answered. We just want to make sure that we're considering everyone's evening and time. With that, our last question submitted in advance, how will changes impact the Public Art Commission? Lady Breon, if you wouldn't mind taking this question.
Absolutely. I am actually a commissioner with the Public Art Commission, so I would love to. So for those of you who don't know, the Public Art Commission was created by a city ordinance, right? So it governs, it's a citizen review board that governs the 1% of public art that folks can apply to do public art installations in Baltimore City, and the money comes from 1% of the capital construction budget, right, provided by the city. Want to make sure there's art available in relation to this budget. And so the PAC basically governs that process, helps to select the funding, and also helps to oversee the city's inventory of public art, right? And so that's essentially what the work of the PAC does. BOPA serves and provides administrative support for the PAC, right? And so it could be such that those duties that BOPA is currently doing will be absorbed back into the mayor's office, or another body will sort of serve as the container for the administrative support of the PAC. But the work of the PAC and the 1% of art will not go away with the termination of the contract, because that was determined by a city ordinance. So that will remain. Folks can still apply to get funding for the public art that they want to do in Baltimore City. And y'all know I'm all about shameless plugs. So I want to also let you know that as a PAC member, that we are currently recruiting for 6 new commissioners that will be sworn in January. Again, this has nothing to do with the contract. There were always going to be 6 new commissioners who were brought in January. So the call is open. And if you would like to serve as a commissioner, you don't necessarily have to be a visual artist. I am a poet myself. So we want all kinds of artists and arts administratives to serve and help to figure out who should be selected and how we can support and maintain public art in Baltimore City. So I encourage you all to reach out if you're interested in serving as one of our new 6 commissioners. So thanks.
Thank you, Lady Breon. Yes, for those of you interested, the Public Art Commission or PAC, please feel free to provide any questions that you have in our chat or to BOPA Communications at promotionandarts.org. Lady Breon is an amazing resource for the commission. Thank you very much. I want to now turn the next few minutes to some of the questions that we've received live this evening. So I want to start with Andrew. Could you please restate or clarify the impact of the city contract termination and how it impacts your relationship with MSAC? For those who are not familiar with that acronym, that is the Maryland State Arts Council.
That's a good question. I am going to volley that over to Rachel to help with some of the specifics, but giving the context, I think again, it's just it is a complex relationship that has a lot of key components to how it is designated and executed. And while the contract does give us the authority and designates us as that, there's different layers to that cake, right, to make it exist. And so, Rachel, I think that's why I want to turn it over to you because I know you've been talking a lot about that.
Yes, so it is a multi-step process. And there's actually, hopefully this will answer an additional question that's in here about the Arts Council designation within the contract. And so the contract does state that it does assign us the responsibility. The other part of that process is that much like the statute that established the Public Art Commission, there is a process to move the designation to another entity, and it is, I think, 3 steps. So first and foremost, there would have to be a concurrent resolution that is agreed upon by City Council as well as the mayor to provide designation to another entity as the Arts Council for the City of Baltimore. But there's additional steps. So there would have to be an application received by the Maryland State Arts Council by the 31st of January. That application would have to be with an entity that has an org chart as well as a 3-year plan for how it intends to serve as the Arts Council for the City of Baltimore. Once that application has been received and reviewed, there are several site inspections and visits that happen through the spring and summer. And then the final step is that the findings of those site inspections are brought to the Maryland State Arts Council for their June meeting. And then the Maryland State Arts Council approves or does not approve that application to serve as to be a part of the Maryland State Arts Council. And my understanding from MSAC is that then they would qualify for dollars in FY26, or the upcoming fiscal year. I think that answers the question that Andrew, the many, many steps that are involved. As it stands right now, we currently retain the designation. We have been approved, if I'm not mistaken, from our development team, have in fact been approved to receive our allotment. There were a number of things, and this actually impacts our funding structure between the delay in receiving dollars because there was a reconsideration of the budget and a decrease in the budget. And then because of the media activity, to be very careful, MSAC wanted to go back over our reporting. Those dollars have been held up, but we have still continued to grant out dollars, waiting for those dollars to be replenished to support the various programs that we utilize those dollars to support. That being said, my understanding, and if Sarah wants to jump into the chat and correct me if I'm wrong, we are moving forward with receipt of the dollars that we were approved for FY25.
Thank you, Rachel. And with that, that concludes the questions I believe that we have received thus far. I want to now turn our last few minutes, if there are other questions, let me just say first again, for those of you listening, if there are any additional questions, please feel free to still drop them in the Q&A. Feel free to email us at bopacommunications@promotioninarts.org, and we can drop that email in the chat. If there are additional questions, we will make sure that we address any concerns in an FAQ document that will be posted on our website later this week. We really just want to make sure that you all feel comfortable with, the questions and responses that you feel supported and with that. Yeah, sure.
I want to jump in because there is a question from Carla Dupree, who has been a very avid partner of ours with City Lit. And so the question is, does this mean independent artists may have opportunities through BOPA after the contract terminates, with or without an Arts Council designation, but arts organizations, given the removal of the Creative Baltimore Fund, may have very limited opportunities for funding? If this is wrong, please state exactly what those opportunities might be. So I'm going to answer there's kind of three parts to this question. So our goal is to fully assess how we work as an arts council moving forward. With or without the designation. We've had conversations with funders that it's a little interesting to be a re-grantor of dollars. And so we really have to think about how we approach providing dollars either to independent artists or to organizations. That said, the Creative Baltimore Fund, from my understanding, will remain intact. I don't know exactly how the deployment of those dollars will happen, but those dollars will I would assume still be available, but I can't speak to what the mayor's plans or the administration's plans are for those dollars. That being said, there are other ways that we can continue to support arts organizations. We talked about business of the arts. We talked about collaborative practices. We talked about collective impact strategies, which is, I think, a different kind of approach. I'm not familiar with collective impact strategies amongst arts organizations in Baltimore, but it's a way that we can work together as independent individual nonprofit organizations that come together for a shared cause with a single convener that can kind of manage the backbone of making those approaches happen. So I hope I was able to answer your question, Carla.
Thank you, Rachel. And I just want to give a moment to confirm what you just mentioned. Sarah just sent me a message that our FY25 funding as a designated arts council has been approved by MSAC and is on its way.
Wonderful. There's another question about the future of the film office. So the film office is one of those items that is outlined in our contract as something that we manage. The city needs a film office, and I would imagine that is something that they're working with managing. That being said, part of this, I talked about the economic development, pipeline development structure of the work that we plan on doing. While there is very, very valid work that the film office does. It does site locations, it does permitting. They do some outbound kind of marketing, if you will. That's a space of overlap and not overlap, but synergy between us and a film office, because the programmatic end and the economic development pipeline work of the supportive industries that go into film production are things that were items that we identified as needing a little bit more robust attention. And because that can generate economic growth for the city and provide employment opportunities for folks who don't think of film office or film as a career strategy. You have young folks that are in some of the amazing programs that the city does, like with the Mayor's Office of African American Male Engagement, where you're training folks, and with MOED, with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development, where you're training young people to do technical skills such as welding and carpentry and electrician work. Those are transferable skills into the film industry. If you talk about I don't want to get the acronym incorrect, but kind of the career development certification programs around cosmetology and the like. Those are supportive industries for the film industry. You talk about fashion. We talked about fashion before, but there's a whole fashion component to the film industry. And so figuring out ways, here's my position. Just because a contract terminates does not mean that the relationship ends. And I feel like there's absolutely spaces where there's still space for us to work together, even absent a contract. And that's what I'm committed to doing. So I got the wrap up sign from the producer over here.
Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. I want to give a quick moment to April Lewis, our interim board secretary, just to speak on board recruitment before I close out with our upcoming events, grants, and exhibitions. April, if you're on the line and available to speak to that.
And April, there was a question that said exactly what qualifies a person to be on the board. So if you want to put that in your remarks, that'd be great.
Great, thank you. Yes, so as you know, BOPA has a very exciting future ahead, and we are looking for, this interim board came together for a year as our term, and we are looking for the next folks to carry this work on. if we are going to be putting out a call for building out a community advisory committee, and also we are going to be looking for board members to have seats on the board. So there'll be lots of ways for artists and folks that are working at other organizations, cultural organizations and things like that that want to be more involved with kind of this work at BOPA. We'll be sort of sharing information about that on our website in the coming days about how you can be involved if you are interested. And then what qualifies you to be able to be on the board are, people that we are looking for people that are passionate about the arts in Baltimore, people that have experience in any of the roles of supporting the arts, a variety of areas of expertise. We obviously have a variety of backgrounds, finance related, as the board's responsibility is, a fiduciary responsibility. So just anybody that's kind of working in adjacent fields or interested, but most importantly, passionate about arts in Baltimore.
Thank you, April. And I want to thank our executive committee of the board as well for being here this evening and answering these questions. And also just to our entire interim board. They're a dynamic group. And as April mentioned, I think art is in all walks of life. And so there are definitely folks who make up a full diverse board that you may not necessarily be thinking of yourself as an artist, but you can still be an arts advocate and be a part of the group. With that, I want to wrap up by just sharing a few upcoming events as we've talked about today. BOPA is still doing work. We are still actively curating and planning and developing and finalizing programs throughout the rest of the year. Free Fall Baltimore, we are still right at the end of Free Fall. It's our Celebration of Arts and Humanities Month, and still going on for 2 more days. So please visit freefallbaltimore.org to find details about the last Free Fall experiences that will be available this year. We also have on Thursday, if you are available, please spend Halloween with us at the Baltimore Museum of Industry for Sustainable Style, a wearable art experience. This is actually the finale to the 2024 Pop-Up Fashion Market Series that's been taking place at the BMI since August, I believe. And BOPA has commissioned 3 sustainable designers to showcase their collections inspired by fantasy, cosplay, and wearable art. The evening will also begin with a viewing of a short film that's actually produced by BOPA, and will take everyone on a journey of the 3 selected designers as they prepared for the show. On Saturday, December 7th and Sunday the 8th, we have the Cloisters Holiday Tea and Bazaar. On Saturday, December 14th, we also will be hosting the Project Artscape finale show with winners from Project Artscape, who will be displaying their collections at the Walters Art Museum from 1 to 4 p.m. And then, of course, we have the Holiday Trains Garden at the Top of the World. The exact date will be announced when those will get started. I also want to mention our upcoming prizes, competitions, and exhibitions. So the Janet Walter Sondheim Art Prize application is now open until November 15th. 5 finalists will be selected this year for the prize and their work exhibited in the Walters Art Museum. The Creative Baltimore Fund application, as was mentioned by Lady Breon, is also now open until December 2nd. That fund, as for those of you who don't know, provides 2 different grant opportunities for general operating supports organizations, and then also a mayor's individual artist project support grant, and that goes to 10 different artists. So grant awards for that are paid out 100% at the time of contract signing and processing for anyone with concerns. And office hours will be held via Zoom on Tuesdays and Sundays throughout November to support applicants through the process. BOPA, as also mentioned, is the Maryland affiliate for the Regional Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, recognizing creative students in grades 7 through 12. So teenagers 13 can apply in 28 categories of writing and art. The submission deadline for Scholastic is Tuesday, December 17th. And then, of course, our exhibitions, we have Ainsley Burroughs, our Fall Peak artist, and his exhibition, The Third Future. A self-portrait is on display at the Gallery in the Sky at the Top of the World in the World Trade Center until November 18th. We also have the Emerge Baltimore Volume 3 Fall Edition, open at the Bromo Arts Seltzer Tower until December 16th, featuring Shay McCoy, Villager, and Sheila Kreider. Lastly, of course, as was mentioned here today, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And for the vast majority of our programming, our team is responsible for garnering financial support through sponsorships, partnerships, grants, and philanthropic dollars. All of those funds are used to curate the events and programs that you have heard about or seen today. If you enjoy what we do and would like to continue seeing some of that programming, please use the QR code if you are moved to donate or volunteer. Of course, we're always accepting volunteers to help us at our events and programs. And with that, if there are no other comments from our executive committee and our CEO, I want to again thank everyone for coming out. I want to thank you for your thoughtful questions and concerns. Again, we are doing our best to make sure that we have thoughtful responses to your questions as well, and are with you on this journey in this transition to figure out what's next. So we hope you will join us on what's next in a variety of different opportunities that we will have. And again, we'll make sure that we publish the additional questions on our website. If there's anything else that you all have questions about, please feel free to reach out to us. Our emails are available on our website as well. And I hope you have a lovely evening. Thank you so much.